The great hall of the Dominion Council stretched upward like the inside of a cathedral. Pillars of white stone rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Light came from floating orbs that drifted slowly through the air. Representatives from 6 elder species sat in curved benches that circled a central platform. They had ruled the Orion Spur for 12,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had crushed rebellions and absorbed lesser civilizations. Nothing surprised them anymore. Ambassador stood on the central platform and felt very small. She was 43 years old. She had spent 20 years in diplomatic service. She had negotiated treaties with hostile corporations and brokered peace between warring colonies. None of that had prepared her for this moment. The alien faces watching her showed expressions she could not read. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. The air smelled strange, like copper and flowers. "You may speak," said High Arbiter. He sat on an elevated throne at the far end of the hall. His species, had founded the Dominion in an age when humans still lived in caves. He was tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and eyes that burned with cold blue light. His voice carried easily across the vast space. Activated her translation device and began her prepared speech. "Honored members of the Dominion Council," she said, "humanity comes before you today with a simple request. We seek trade rights with Dominion worlds. We seek representation in this council. We seek to be recognized as equals in the galactic community." She paused and looked around the hall. No one moved. No one spoke. "We are a young species," she continued. "We have been traveling among the stars for only 300 years, but we have proven ourselves capable of peaceful cooperation. We have built colonies. We have developed technology. We have shown that we can be good neighbors." She waited again, still nothing. "We ask only for the chance to prove our worth," she finished. "We ask for fairness and respect." The silence stretched on for a long moment. Then High Arbiter began to laugh. It was not a pleasant sound. It echoed through the hall like breaking glass. Other council members joined in. The laughter rolled over like a wave of contempt. She stood still and kept her face calm, but inside she felt something cold settle in her chest. "Fairness," said when the laughter faded. "Respect. These are words that carry weight in our council. They are not given freely to soft-boned scavengers who crawled out of their gravity well barely yesterday." Felt her hands clench at her sides. "We have done nothing to earn such disrespect." "You have done nothing at all," replied. "That is the point. You are children playing at civilization. You are animals who learn to build ships. Come back in 1,000 years. Perhaps then we will consider your request." He waved one long-fingered hand in dismissal. Wanted to argue. She wanted to list humanity's achievements to defend her species' honor, but she recognized the futility of it. These beings had already made their judgment. Nothing she said would change their minds. She bowed stiffly and left the hall. 3 months later, the raids began. They were a client species of the Dominion. They were reptilian creatures with scaled skin and sharp teeth. They had served for centuries, doing the dirty work that elder species preferred not to handle. In exchange, they were allowed certain privileges. One of those privileges was raiding. The first target was a colony called New Providence. It was a farming world on the edge of human space. 8,000 people lived there, growing food for the inner colonies. They had no military presence. They had no weapons beyond hunting rifles. They had never expected to need them. The ships came at night. Was 12 years old when the sky turned red. He was helping his father repair a tractor when the first explosions hit the grain silos. His father grabbed him and ran toward the house, but they never made it. A raider landed in the field ahead of them, and armored soldiers poured out. Watched his father die trying to protect him. Then strong hands grabbed him and threw him into a transport ship with dozens of other children. The same scene played out across the colony. They killed anyone who resisted and captured everyone else. They loaded humans into cargo holds like livestock. They burned the buildings and poisoned the fields. When they left, New Providence was a dead world. 2 more colonies fell in the following weeks: Harmony Station, Port Augustine. The attacks followed the same pattern. They took what they wanted and destroyed the rest. 40,000 humans were captured. Families were separated. Children were torn from their parents. The weak and the old were left to die. Earth sent formal protests to the Dominion Council. The Dominion did not respond. Earth sent demands for the return of its citizens. The Dominion remained silent. Earth sent warnings of consequences. The Dominion laughed. Ambassador returned home on a diplomatic shuttle. She carried with her recordings from the attacks. Security cameras had captured everything. She had footage of soldiers shooting unarmed farmers. She had audio of them laughing as they separated families. She had images of human children crammed into cages meant for animals. She presented these recordings to the United Earth Parliament. The chamber was full. Representatives from every nation and colony had gathered for this session. They watched the footage in complete silence. Some wept. Some looked away. Some stared at the screens with expressions of cold fury. When the recordings ended, no one spoke for a long time. Prime Minister David stood slowly. He was an old man with gray hair and a face lined by years of difficult decisions. He had led humanity through crises before. He had always found a path to peace. But as he looked at the faces of his fellow representatives, he knew that peace was no longer an option. "They have taken our people," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silent chamber. "They have murdered our citizens. They have laughed at our protests and ignored our demands." He paused and looked at the frozen image on the screen. It showed a soldier holding a human child by the arm. The child was screaming. "They have mistaken our patience for weakness," continued. "They have mistaken our desire for peace for an inability to wage war. They have looked at humanity and seen nothing but easy prey." His hands gripped the podium. His knuckles turned white. "They will learn otherwise." The chamber erupted in a roar of approval. Representatives who had argued with each other for decades now stood together. Old enemies clasped hands. Ancient grievances were set aside. In that moment, humanity spoke with one voice. The vote was unanimous. Earth would have its retribution. In her apartment that night, sat alone in the dark. She had spent her life working for peace. She had believed that diplomacy could solve any problem, that understanding could bridge any gap. Now she understood that some beings did not want peace. Some beings only understood force. She looked out her window at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, 40,000 humans waited in chains. Children wondered if anyone would come for them. Families prayed for rescue that might never arrive. Made a decision. She would not just wait for the military to act. She would do what she did best. She would talk. She would persuade. She would build alliances with species who had also suffered under the Dominion's arrogance. She would make sure that when humanity struck back, the galaxy would know exactly why. She began making calls. The war for humanity's future had begun. The message arrived on every screen, every device, every display across human space at exactly the same moment. It was not a request. It was not a suggestion. It was a call to arms. "Citizens of Earth and all human colonies," the message began. "Our people have been taken. Our worlds have been burned. Our pleas for justice have been ignored. The time for words has ended. The time for action has begun." The response was immediate and overwhelming. In the shipyards of Mars, workers who had been building passenger vessels began constructing warships. They worked double shifts without complaint. They slept in the factories when they were too tired to go home. Engineers who had designed pleasure cruises now designed weapons platforms. Mechanics who had maintained cargo haulers now assembled fighter craft. Within weeks, the first new ships were leaving the construction docks. On Earth, Military academies opened their doors to anyone willing to serve. The lines stretched around city blocks. Old soldiers who had sworn never to fight again came out of retirement. Young people who had never held a weapon volunteered by the millions. Training camps expanded across every continent. The sound of drilling echoed from dawn to dusk. Admiral James watched all of this from his office at Fleet Command. He was 58 years old, a veteran of 3 colonial conflicts and a dozen peacekeeping missions. He had gray at his temples and scars on his hands. He had seen enough war to last several lifetimes. His daughter Sarah had been on New Providence when they attacked. She had been a teacher at the colony school. She had been 26 years old with her whole life ahead of her. Now she was either dead or in chains somewhere in space. He did not know which was worse. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said. General Wei entered. She was the head of Earth's ground forces, a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for getting things done. She carried in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. She set the coffee on his desk. "You look like you need this," she said. "Thank you." He took a sip. It was strong and bitter, exactly how he liked it. "The numbers are in," Wei said, tapping her. "We have 3 million volunteers for ground forces, another 2 million for naval operations. Industrial output is up 40% across all sectors. Every colony has pledged resources." "It's not enough," said. "Not yet," Wei agreed. "But give us 6 months. We'll have a fleet the galaxy has never seen." Nodded slowly. 6 months. In 6 months, Sarah and the other captives might be dead. They might be worked to death in mines or sold to other species as slaves. Every day that passed was a day they suffered. But rushing into battle unprepared would only get more people killed. He had learned that lesson the hard way in his younger days. Patience was not the same as weakness. Planning was not the same as cowardice. When humanity struck, they would strike hard enough that no one would ever dare attack them again. "What about intelligence?" he asked. "That's the interesting part," Wei said. She pulled up a map on her and projected it onto the wall. Stars and planets appeared, with colored lines showing trade routes and military positions. "We've been receiving information from unexpected sources." "What sources?" "Other species, ones who have suffered under the Dominion." She highlighted several worlds on the map. "They don't just bully humans. They've been exploiting smaller civilizations for thousands of years. Most are too afraid to speak up, but some are willing to help us quietly." Leaned forward. "What kind of help?" "Patrol schedules, defense codes, fleet positions. Nothing that would directly implicate them, but enough to give us a significant advantage." Wei smiled thinly. "It seems we're not the only ones who want to see the Dominion humbled." Meanwhile, Ambassador was conducting her own campaign. She traveled from system to system in a small diplomatic ship. She visited worlds that the Dominion had ignored or mistreated. She showed them the recordings from New Providence. She explained what humanity was planning. She asked for nothing except that they watch and remember. On a frozen moon called Tethys, she met with representatives of a species of tall, four-armed beings who had been membership in the Dominion for centuries. "Why should we care about human problems?" the leader asked. His voice was like wind through reeds. "The Dominion has made our lives difficult, but they have not attacked us." "Not yet," replied. "But do you think they will stop with us? Do you think that once they have crushed humanity, they will become kinder, more reasonable?" She shook her head. "The Dominion respects only strength. As long as they believe they can take what they want without consequence, they will continue to do so." The leader was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again. "We will not fight alongside you," he said. "We are not warriors, but we will watch. And if you succeed, we will remember who our true friends are." It was not much, but it was enough. Moved on to the next world. Back on Earth, the preparations continued. In a secret facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Scientists worked on weapons that had existed only in theory until now. Gravity pulse generators that could crush a ship from the inside out. Swarms that could eat through any armor. AI systems that could predict enemy movements before they happened. These weapons had been considered too dangerous to build, too powerful to use. Now they were humanity's only hope. Doctor led the Gravity Weapon Project. She was a physicist who had spent her career studying the fundamental forces of the universe. She had never imagined her work would be used for war. But when her nephew had been taken in the Harmony Station raid, something had changed inside her. Science without purpose was just curiosity. Science with purpose could change the world. "The tests are complete," she reported to Admiral during a video conference. "The gravity pulse works exactly as predicted. One direct hit will collapse any ship currently in the Dominion fleet." "Side effects?" asked. "None that affect our ships. We've developed shielding that neutralizes the pulse at close range." She paused. "There is one issue, though." "What?" "The weapon doesn't distinguish between military and civilian targets. If we use it near a populated area, the casualties would be catastrophic." Closed his eyes. This was the burden of command. Every weapon was a choice. Every choice had consequences. "Then we won't use it near populated areas," he said. "We're not monsters, we're not them." "Understood," said, and she meant it. 6 months passed. The Retribution fleet took shape. 200 warships, each one built with a single purpose. 50,000 trained soldiers, ready to fight and die for their people. Weapons that the galaxy had never seen and would never forget. Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship, the UES Remembrance. It was named for everyone who had been lost, everyone who was still waiting for rescue. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They were young and old, men and women from every nation and every colony. They were humanity united. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "all ships report ready." Looked at the stars on the... Somewhere out there, Sarah was waiting. 40,000 humans were waiting. They had been waiting for 6 months, wondering if anyone remembered them, wondering if anyone cared. "Set course for Prime," said. "It's time to bring our people home." The fleet jumped too. The Retribution had begun. The Defense Command had been monitoring space for 300 years. They had sophisticated sensors that could detect a ship jumping into their system from light years away. They had warning protocols and response procedures drilled into every officer. They were prepared for any attack. They were not prepared for this. The human fleet emerged from without any warning. 200 ships appeared in perfect formation above Prime, their weapons already powered and targeting systems locked. The Defense Command sensors screamed with alerts that came too late to matter. Commander was on duty when it happened. He was a veteran officer with 30 years of service. He had helped plan the raids on human colonies. He had laughed at the images of terrified humans running from soldiers. He had personally approved the slave quotas. Now he stared at his display in disbelief. "That's impossible," he whispered. "No one can jump that precisely. No one can avoid our early warning systems." But the evidence was right in front of him. The human ships were real. They were here, and they were not waiting for an invitation. The first salvo hit the orbital defense platforms before they could even raise shields. The platforms had been built to repel entire fleets. They lasted 7 minutes against the human assault. Missiles that moved too fast to track. Energy weapons that cut through armor like paper. Electronic warfare systems that turned the own defenses against them. Tried to coordinate a response. He ordered ships to launch. He directed ground batteries to fire. He called for reinforcements from the outer colonies, but nothing worked. The humans seemed to know every move before he made it. When he ordered ships to flank left, human fighters were already waiting. When he redirected power to shields, human weapons switched to frequencies that passed right through. It was like fighting ghosts. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Admiral watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The Neuralink system was working exactly as designed. Every ship in the fleet was connected, sharing information and coordinating movements in real time. They fought as one organism, thousands of minds working together toward a single goal. "Defense grid is down," his tactical officer reported. "Orbital platforms destroyed. Enemy fleet is scattering." "Don't pursue too aggressively," ordered. "We're not here to destroy ships. We're here for our people." "Understood, sir." Opened a channel to all frequencies. His voice would be heard on every ship, every station, every device on Prime. "Attention, government and military," he said. "This is Admiral James of the United Earth Fleet. We have not come for conquest. We have not come for revenge. We have come for our people." He paused, letting the words sink in. "6 months ago, your raiders attacked 3 human colonies. They killed thousands of innocent people. They took 40,000 more as slaves. We have come to bring them home." On the planet below, the broadcast echoed through streets and buildings. Citizens stopped what they were doing and listened. Some were afraid. Some were angry. Some simply could not believe what they were hearing. The soft-boned scavengers had come for them. The weak little humans had crossed the galaxy to fight. "This is your one opportunity," continued. "Release all human prisoners immediately. Surrender those responsible for the raids. Do this, and we will withdraw peacefully. Refuse, and you will face the full might of Earth's retribution." Commander received the message on his console. For a moment, he considered compliance. His fleet was shattered. His defenses were gone. Logic said he should surrender. But pride was stronger than logic. "All ground batteries, target the human flagship," he ordered. "Show these animals what happens when they threaten the Dominion's servants." The ground batteries opened fire. Missiles streaked upward from 100 locations across the continent. It was an impressive display of firepower, enough to overwhelm any conventional fleet. The human ships did not move. Instead, small drones launched from every vessel. Thousands of them, each no bigger than a person's fist. They swarmed toward the incoming missiles and detonated on contact. Every single missile was intercepted. Not one reached its target. Then the drones kept going. They descended toward the ground batteries and exploded against their targeting systems. In seconds, the entire planetary defense network went blind. "They killed our missiles," an officer whispered in disbelief. "They knew exactly where to hit us." Scales had gone pale. He had never seen technology like this. He had never imagined it could exist. For the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to be completely outmatched. On its order, the ground assault began. Descended through the atmosphere, protected by fighter escorts. They headed for the slave compounds, the detention centers, the processing facilities where human prisoners were held. Intelligence from their allies had provided exact locations. They knew which buildings held their people. They knew which guards would resist and which would run. Major Santos led the assault on Compound 7, the largest slave facility on the planet. Her team of 200 soldiers landed in the courtyard and fanned out with practiced efficiency. Guards tried to stop them. They failed. Santos moved through the compound with cold precision. She had been a schoolteacher before the war. She had watched her students grow up and graduate and build lives of their own. Then they had taken her colony. They had taken her students. They had taken everything she cared about. Now she was taking it back. The cells were worse than she had imagined. Hundreds of humans packed into spaces meant for dozens. Sick and wounded left without medical care. Children separated from their parents, crying in the dark. "It's okay," Santos told them as her soldiers broke open the locks. "We're here. We're taking you home." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers found their people in mines and factories, in cages and chains. They found the sick and the starving. They found the dead who had not survived captivity. And they found children like, who had spent 6 months wondering if anyone would come. Did not cry when the soldiers found him. He had forgotten how to cry. But when a woman in human military armor knelt beside him and said, "We've got you, sweetheart," something broke inside him. He grabbed her arm and would not let go. By the end of the first day, 15,000 humans had been recovered. By the end of the second day, that number had doubled. The government, what was left of it, had collapsed into chaos. Some officials tried to flee. Human ships intercepted them. Some tried to negotiate. They were told to wait. On the third day, Commander was captured trying to escape in a civilian transport. They brought him before Admiral. "You led the raids," said. "It was not a question." Said nothing. His proud stance had crumbled. He looked like what he was, a coward facing the consequences of his actions. "My daughter was on New Providence," continued. "Sarah, 26 years old, teacher. She loved children and books and helping people." His voice remained steady, but his eyes burned. "Did you know that when you gave the order to attack?" Still silence. "Did you think about any of them? Did you care that they were people with lives and families and dreams?" Leaned forward. "Or were they just cargo to you, just resources to be harvested?" Finally spoke. His voice was a dry rasp. "The Dominion said you were weak. They said you would not fight back." "They were wrong," said, "and now the whole galaxy will know it." The liberation of Prime was complete within 72 hours. 23,000 humans were recovered alive. They were loaded onto transport ships and given food, medicine, and clean clothes for the first time in months. Many wept. Many could not believe they were free. Sarah was not among them. She had died in a mining accident 3 months earlier. They had not bothered to report it. Admiral received the news in his ready room. He sat alone for a long time, staring at a photograph of his daughter. She was smiling in the picture, standing in front of her classroom, surrounded by students who loved her. Then he wiped his eyes, straightened his uniform, and returned to the bridge. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving reports. The Dominion has mobilized their combined fleet. They're gathering in the corridor." Looked at the stars on they were just servants. The real enemy was still out there, preparing to strike back. "Good," he said. "Let them come." High Arbiter had ruled the Dominion for 300 years. He had crushed rebellions that threatened to tear the Confederation apart. He had negotiated treaties that expanded influence across half the galaxy. He had never lost a war. He did not intend to start now. The fleet that gathered in the corridor was the largest military force assembled in 12,000 years. 4,000 warships from 6 elder species, each one crewed by veterans who had fought a dozen campaigns. Battle cruisers the size of small moons. Carrier ships that held thousands of fighters. Destroyers and frigates and assault vessels of every configuration. Stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and surveyed his armada. It stretched across like a wall of steel and fire. "They have 200 ships," his tactical advisor said. "We have 4,000. Even with their surprise weapons, the mathematics are simple." "Never underestimate an enemy who has nothing to lose," replied. But even he did not truly believe the humans could win. They had succeeded against through surprise, nothing more. Real military power required centuries of development, generations of warriors bred for combat. The humans had neither. The report from Prime had disturbed him, though. The speed of the human assault, the precision of their strikes, the technology that seemed impossible for such a young species. There was something wrong about these humans, something he did not understand. But understanding was not required. Victory was required, and victory would come through overwhelming force. "Signal all ships," ordered. "Advance formation. We will meet the humans at Veeler's Gate and crush them there." The Dominion fleet moved forward like a wave of death. Admiral watched them come. The human fleet had positioned itself at Veeler's Gate, a narrow passage between 2 brown dwarf stars. It was the only route from space to the core of human territory. Any fleet that wanted to reach Earth would have to pass through here. 200 human ships faced 4,000 Dominion vessels. The odds were 20 to 1 against them. By any logical calculation, they should have retreated. They should have negotiated. They should have surrendered. They held their position. "All ships report ready," Commander Wei said. She was second in command, a calm woman who never raised her voice even in crisis. "Neuralink is active. Gravity weapons are charged. Swarms are deployed." "What about the special project?" asked. Wei allowed herself a small smile. "The Athena protocol is online. Doctor says it's performing beyond expectations." The Athena protocol was humanity's secret weapon. It was not a bomb or a missile or any physical device. It was an artificial intelligence, the most advanced ever created, designed specifically for combat coordination. Athena could process more information in 1 second than every human admiral in history combined. She could predict enemy movements, coordinate friendly fire, and adapt to changing conditions faster than any organic mind. And she was very, very good at war. "Incoming transmission from the Dominion flagship," the communications officer announced. "Put it through," said. High Arbiter's face appeared on the. His silver skin gleamed in the cold light of his bridge. His blue eyes held nothing but contempt. "Admiral," he said, "I offer you one chance to surrender. Release the prisoners you have taken. Withdraw from space. Accept Dominion jurisdiction over your species. Do this, and we will be merciful." Almost laughed, almost. "You attacked our colonies," he said. "You murdered our people. You took our children and sold them into slavery. And now you speak to me of mercy." "I speak of reality," replied. "Look at the forces arrayed against you. You cannot win this battle. You cannot survive it. Pride is not worth extinction." "You're right about one thing," said. "Pride is not worth extinction. But some things are worth dying for: freedom, justice, the knowledge that no one will ever attack our people again without facing consequences." He straightened in his chair. "Today, the Dominion learns that lesson." He cut the transmission. "All ships," he announced over the fleet channel. "This is Admiral. The enemy outnumbers us 20 to 1. They expect us to run. They expect us to hide. They expect us to beg for our lives." His voice hardened. "Show them what humans are made of." The battle began. The Dominion fleet advanced in a classic wedge formation, designed to split the enemy and destroy them in detail. It was a tactic that had won 100 victories. Against any other opponent, it would have worked. But Athena had studied every battle in Dominion history. She knew their tactics better than they did. She had run 10 million simulations and found the weaknesses they did not know they had. The human fleet did not try to match the wedge. Instead, they scattered into seemingly random groups, each one moving independently. The Dominion commanders laughed. The humans were panicking. They were falling apart. Then the trap closed. The scattered groups converged on the points of the wedge, hitting it from multiple angles simultaneously. Human ships moved with impossible coordination, each one knowing exactly where to be and when. Missiles launched from one ship were guided by targeting data from another. Energy weapons fired in sequences that created overlapping fields of destruction. The Dominion wedge shattered. "Impossible," his tactical advisor whispered. "They're anticipating our movements. They know where we're going before we get there." "Then change our movements," snapped. "Random evasion patterns, no predictable formations." The order went out. Dominion ships began moving erratically, abandoning coordination for chaos. But chaos was exactly what Athena wanted. Chaos meant confusion. Confusion meant mistakes. Mistakes meant openings. The gravity pulse weapons fired for the first time. The Dominion battlecruiser Hammer of Justice was hit by a pulse that should have been impossible. One moment, it was a massive vessel bristling with weapons. The next moment, it was collapsing inward, crushed by gravity forces that bent space itself. The ship imploded, folding in on itself like paper in a fire. Across the battlefield, more pulses hit more ships. The Dominion fleet had never faced weapons like this. They had no defense against them. They could not even understand what was happening. Then the swarms arrived. Clouds of microscopic machines descended on Dominion vessels and began eating through their hulls. The swarms were not fast, but they were relentless. Ship after ship found their armor dissolving, their systems failing, their crews exposed to vacuum. Some captains tried to flee. Human ships ran them down. Some captains tried to surrender. Human marines boarded their vessels and took them prisoner. The battle had become a rout. High Arbiter watched his fleet die around him. 1,500 ships destroyed. 800 captured. The survivors were scattered, leaderless, fleeing in every direction. The greatest military force in galactic history had been broken in a single battle. "This is not possible," he said. His voice was hollow. "We are the Dominion. We have ruled for 12,000 years. We cannot be defeated by animals." But the evidence was all around him. Burning ships and floating debris and the silence of defeat. The human flagship approached the Eternal Dominion. It was smaller than its vessel, but it moved with the confidence of a predator approaching wounded prey. "Arbiter," his communications officer said, "the human admiral is requesting that we surrender." Closed his eyes. He thought about all the species he had conquered, all the civilizations he had crushed, all the times he had demanded surrender from beings he considered inferior. Now the positions were reversed. Now he was the one facing annihilation. "Very well," he said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. "Signal our surrender." Human marines boarded the Eternal Dominion within the hour. They were professional and efficient. They secured the crew without unnecessary violence. They treated the wounded with care. Admiral came aboard personally to accept surrender. The two leaders stood face to face in the conference room of the Dominion flagship. Was tall and silver and ancient, was shorter and darker, and had lived barely a fraction of the Arbiter's years. But only one of them had won this day. "The path to Prime is open," said. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your allies have fled or surrendered. You have nothing left to bargain with." Said nothing. What was there to say? "We could destroy your," continued. "We have the power. We have the opportunity. Many of my people believe we have the right after what you did to us." He paused, and something shifted in his expression. The cold warrior gave way to something more human, more complicated. "But we are not you," said. "We do not destroy worlds. We do not enslave populations. We do not treat other species as lesser beings to be exploited." He took a breath. "You will face justice for what you did, but justice is not the same as revenge." Finally spoke. His voice was quiet, defeated. "What do you want?" "You'll find out soon enough," replied, "when we reach your and present our terms." He turned and walked away, leaving the High Arbiter alone with the wreckage of everything he had built. The human fleet arrived above Prime on a day that their calendar marked as sacred. It was the festival of eternal light, a holiday celebrating 12,000 years of Dominion rule. Billions had gathered in temples and public squares to honor their ancestors and their heritage. Instead, they looked up and saw the sky filled with foreign ships. The warships hung in orbit like a crown of steel and fire. They did not fire. They did not move. They simply waited, a reminder of what they could do if they chose. On the surface, panic spread through the population. Parents gathered their children. Officials fled to bunkers. Military units that had not been destroyed at Velar's gates scrambled to defend a planet that could not be defended. Ambassador watched it all from the bridge of the remembrance. She had spent the past months building alliances, gathering witnesses, preparing for this moment. Now the moment had arrived, and she felt strangely calm. "Ambassador," Admiral said, "the channel is ready." nodded and stepped forward. Her image would be broadcast to every screen on the planet, every ship in orbit, every news network that could receive the signal. The whole galaxy would hear what she had to say. "Citizens of Prime," she began. I am a representative of the United Earth Parliament, speaking on behalf of all humanity." She paused and looked into the camera. "8 months ago, your government authorized raids on our colonies. Our people were murdered. Our children were taken. When we asked for justice, we were laughed at. When we demanded the return of our citizens, we were ignored. When we warned of consequences, we were dismissed as soft-boned scavengers unworthy of concern." Her voice hardened. "We have come to show you how wrong you were." On the planet below, watched with fear and anger and confusion, many had never even heard of the raids. Many had been told that humans were primitives, barely capable of speech. Now those primitives had destroyed the greatest fleet in galactic history and held there at gunpoint. "We could destroy you," continued. "Your fleet is broken. Your allies have abandoned you. Our ships carry weapons that could reduce your cities to ash in hours. We have the power, and many of my people believe we have the right." She let the words hang in the air. "But we are not here for destruction. We are not here for revenge. We are here for justice." She pulled up a document on her display. "These are our terms. First, all human slaves throughout Dominion space will be released immediately. Every single one. Those who have died in captivity will be identified, and their remains will be returned to their families." On worlds across the former Dominion, slave owners heard this and felt something they had never felt before: fear. Second, the Dominion will pay reparations to Earth and all affected colonies. These reparations will be paid over 50 years and will be used to rebuild what was destroyed and to care for those who were harmed. The economic advisors on Prime calculated the cost and went pale. It would not destroy their economy, but it would hurt. For a civilization that had never paid for anything it could take, it was a profound humiliation. Third, any species that wishes to leave the Dominion may do so freely. The Dominion will not retaliate against them. They will be under the protection of Earth and our allies. This was the term that struck hardest. For 12,000 years, the Dominion had held other species in its grip through fear and force. Now that grip was being broken. Already new messages were being sent from oppressed worlds, asking if the offer was real, if freedom was truly possible. Fourth, High Arbiter and all officials involved in the raids will stand trial for crimes against humanity. They will be judged by an international court, with representatives from multiple species. If found guilty, they will serve their sentences in a facility of our choosing. Watched this from his cell on the Remembrance. He had ruled an empire. He had commanded millions. Now he was a prisoner awaiting judgment for actions he had thought would never have consequences. "These are our terms," concluded. "They are not negotiable. You have 24 hours to accept them in full. If you do not, we will take what we have come for by force." She cut the transmission. For a long moment the bridge was silent, then spoke. "Well done, Ambassador." "It's not over yet," replied. "They might refuse, they might fight." "They won't," said. He sounded tired but certain. "They've seen what we can do. They know they can't win. Pride will make them angry, but self-preservation will make them surrender." He was right. The government accepted the terms within 12 hours. They had no choice. The alternative was extinction, and even the proudest of them was not willing to die for honor alone. The liberation began immediately. Across Dominion space, human soldiers and their allies descended on slave compounds and detention centers. They found their people in chains and cages, in mines and factories, in places that would have broken weaker species. But humans were not weak. They had survived. They had waited. They had never stopped hopping. Was among those freed from a labor camp on a moon called Shadow. He was 13 now, thin and with eyes that had seen too much. When the human soldiers found him, he did not speak. He simply stood there, staring, as if he could not believe it was real. A woman in military armor knelt beside him. It was Major Santos, the same woman who had freed the prisoners on Prime. "Do you remember me?" she asked softly. Nodded slowly. "We're taking you home," Santos said. "All the way home to Earth. You're going to see trees and oceans and blue sky. You're going to eat real food and sleep in a real bed, and no one is ever going to hurt you again." Started to cry. It was the first time he had cried since the night his father died. The tears came slowly at first, then faster, until his whole body was shaking with sobs. Santos held him and let him cry. It was the same across 100 worlds. Human families reunited after months of separation. Children found parents they thought they had lost forever. The dead were mourned. The living were celebrated, and the galaxy watched in amazement. In the aftermath, humanity did not seek empire. The liberated colonies became the foundation of a new alliance, one built not on fear but on mutual respect. They called it the Free Worlds Coalition. Its charter was simple. All species were equal, all voices were heard, and no one would ever be abandoned to face injustice alone. Other species, long oppressed by the Dominion, petitioned to join. They were among the first. So were the splinter groups who had opposed the raids. So were a dozen other civilizations who had watched humanity's victory and seen something they had never believed possible. A species that had the power to destroy and chose not to. Admiral retired to New Providence. The colony had been rebuilt, its fields replanted, its buildings restored. A memorial stood in the central square, listing the names of everyone who had died in the original raid. Sarah's name was carved near the top. He visited the memorial every morning. He would stand there for a long time, remembering his daughter, remembering the war, remembering all the choices that had led him to this moment. Sometimes other people would join him. Sometimes he was alone. On one such morning, Ambassador found him there. Secretary General now, she corrected when he used her old title. The coalition had elected her to lead them, a position she had never sought but could not refuse. "Though I'm not sure I deserve it." "You do," said. "You held us together when we wanted to tear each other apart. You reminded us what we were fighting for." Looked at the memorial. Was it worth it, she asked. All the deaths, all the destruction, was any of it worth it? Was silent for a long moment. "Ask the children we brought home," he finally said. "Ask the families who were reunited. Ask the species who are free now because someone finally stood up to the Dominion." He paused. "Then ask me again." Nodded slowly, she understood. Across the galaxy, a new proverb had begun to spread. It was repeated in trading posts and council chambers, in ships and stations, in every place where beings gathered to discuss the universe and their place in it. "Never mistake human mercy for human weakness," the proverb went. "They choose not to destroy, but they always can." It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget. And on New Providence, in the shadow of the memorial, James finally allowed himself to smile. They had done it. They had brought their people home. They had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. And they had done it without losing themselves in the process. That, in the end, was the greatest victory of all.